All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Let's see if my button works. Data Dictionary Workgroup. There's my info and my overexposed beard. Give you a chance to capture that. And there's Kevin's info. I'll give you guys a second with that. And I'll give you a warning. This is going to be conversational and interactive. And if you're all like quiet, we're just going to stand here like one of those awkward moments. I'm good at having awkward moments. Okay. RESO strives to increase competition in the marketplace and will not be a forum for anti-competitive conduct. The RESO antitrust policy governs the activities of RESO and its members, including this meeting. Please consult RESO's counsel if you have any questions about our policy. All right, so that top email there, that is your key to the castle. Anything you want, any thoughts that you have, shoot it there. Jason, I'm on it. I know Josh is on it. I think you're on it, Kevin. You get those? Yep. You got a whole bunch of us listening, so if one of us isn't paying attention, that's okay. Somebody's gonna pay attention to you. And if you need to join the work group, we got a page for that. That will get you essentially, I think the main thing you want to watch for being in the work group is watch the Data Dictionary Confluence board and what's going on there. Make sure you're getting notifications. Make sure you're following that. There's stuff happening there that is going to harm you. It's going to sneak up you at night. No. But it's going to create work for you. And if you're not paying attention, sorry, we do our best to take our time. You'll see we got a couple topics today that, you know, some might really want us to vote it in the current version, but we're not, because we need to vet it out. We need to make sure we get participation. So, participating, how do you do it? Who has not done a post to Confluence? Do me a favor and raise up your hand. All right, so I want you to become comfortable with this. If there's anything that you want to put in front of the work group, there are no filters. Now, if you go on there and get all profane and tell us why your 57 Chevy, you know, sold for less than it should have, we're probably going to delete your post and ask you to stop that. But the idea is there for you to be able to address the work group with anything that you want. Now, you have tools, though. You have help. If you're not sure of what you're asking for or what you want to know isn't already covered, refer back to the first bullet point. Just ask us. We'll do the post for you. We will sit down with you and come up with a strategy to help you win, even if I personally disagree with what you want to do. I'll probably let you know, but we will help you in any way, shape, or form to get what you want done into the pipe so that it can come back to this group and we can get a decision done on it. And that's really the fundamental. Now, if you want help with like, how do I do searches against the wiki? How do I leverage the dictionary? Things like that. You can email that address. You can give us a holler. More than happy. Part of the volunteer gig is helping you engage with the dictionary, understanding what it is. There's lots of resources as well. And Jason, who you'll be hearing from, which he's sitting over there, is one of the best things to happen to the dictionary in all the time that I've been doing it. And he's definitely a resource, and now he's going to be pissed at me because a bunch of people are going to call him and ask him to do things, and he's already got a full-time job. But there is utility here, there is procedure. You can rely on that if you want something done, we need it up on Confluence. If you come and say, golly, you know, we had talked about this and I really thought we were going to have it in the dictionary, where is it? I might have a lot of empathy. Matter of fact, I might even be commiserating with you because it's something I wanted to happen, but if it didn't get posted, it isn't getting done. And it doesn't matter where that's coming from. You might have a work group that votes something in. If it doesn't get posted, it's not getting done. So if you're in a work group, keep an eye on that. Somebody has to follow the official communication channel. And the reason why we're so strict on that is because we're a community with the dictionary. You all need a chance to look at it. You all need a chance to ask questions because you're going to be asked to vote on it. So any kind of questions, any kind of thoughts or challenges as far as getting what you want in front of the work group? Awkward moment time. Anything you'd like to change? Somebody just make something up, just so we have some sort of a conversation. All right, so in the back there, then I'll come up to you, Matthew.
Hey, Adam Beckerman at Compass.
Howdy.
Good to see you, Rob.
Yeah.
We're a prospective member. We were a member. We're on our way to becoming a member again.
Good.
We don't have access to the Confluence as a non-member.
Start as a member, or Sam, don't get mad at me. Be friends with somebody who's a member. You have to have a login, and to have a login, you got to be a member. Now, will we listen? Can you email DD and say, hey, this is a concept we got? We don't filter out stuff because the idea does or doesn't come from a member. So if you're not a member and you want to throw something into it, we'll definitely listen, because our mission here isn't to do member stuff. We're all about membership, but our stuff here is to improve the standard. So by all means, join, but you can also use DD RESO. All right, Matthew.
I just have a question. What's the best way to engage on or challenge something that's in the data dictionary? We recently native crawl space is a hot topic that is not aligning with the
Awesome. Exact same way. You have to know that when you're changing stuff, we can help you with perspective, but the first perspective you can do is one of the awesome things that Josh built, is you can go to something like, say, all right, I got this enumeration that's related to crawl space. You can see how much it's used. That should give you some perspective, because if you see that there's, maybe there's a few vendors that have it implemented, but there's only a couple organizations, that says one thing. But if you've got 800 organizations already using it, that's another thing. And maybe it's time to think about it a little more strategically than straightforward. I believe there's always a solution, but sometimes it is going back to your committee saying sorry. But we can usually come up with something that covers the needs. But look at that, because that's, you might even discover that you're gonna cause pain to yourself or to your vendor, and that's a big part of the strategy, is the impact. And then you can search for prior topics, prior discussions. So when you go into Confluence, there's there's the sort of quick search on the items that take a while to load. So as you're typing, it gives you results. But there's another search down below there that searches across everything, and it's a lot stronger. And I'd recommend just kind of looking around on the page. There's also a search that goes across everything. So play around with that when it comes to researching your topics. And then, of course, if you email us or talk to Jason or I, and we happen to know off the top of our heads that, well, this problem's already solved, we're happy to get that information over to you. Right? Or if you want to argue a point, getting the background on it is a great thing. You might even be able to show, look, there were only 8 people in that meeting. I don't know if I actually have that data for you, but. All right, any other questions about interacting? If you need any help getting in, you can email the address. There's another email address for membership, but if you just send it to DD, you can keep it simple. We'll get you into whatever you need to.
Quick question.
Oh, yeah.
What's the next version? When do you anticipate it being released, and what major initiatives do you plan on including?
Could you talk a little closer to the mic?
Sure. When is your next version going to be released? What do you anticipate including into it? And what is it, going to be 2.1, or what are you thinking?
Well, we're going to come across that. I thought I heard you say something about lease. No, okay. Yep, we will be covering that today. And surprise, it's not going to be 2.1. You're gonna learn about some changes here. Oh, there we go. Okay, let me make sure I got that right. Okay, here's the agenda. I'm not going to spend any time on this. I think we actually changed things to where that might not be totally accurate. Okay, so speaking of 2.1. So as we built the dictionary, it was just sort of like, okay, we kind of got version 1 maybe. I think it was around version 2 we started saying we should have a version number. So we were already versioning and we weren't even versioning. The first one we really kind of recorded was 1.3. And we were always just doing these dots because it was just wholesale bulk, additions. We were doing plenty of deprecations early on. We'd realized that what we did last year was totally stupid and throw it away. There were changes of data types. There was a lot of, because we were doing such wholesale representation of what we thought the MLS organizations had, there was a lot of churn. Now that we've got tools in place, we've got testing, we're going to adopt this notion of major minor patch. Now, data dictionary updates are going to tend to be a full version because we do change data types frequently enough. I'm going to guess that we're going to do full version changes just about every year. But the benefit, and to me that doesn't matter, if you call it 1.3 or call it 3, I don't care. The nice benefit of doing this though is, you know how we'd fix a definition? And we had that one timestamp we'd do in there, but you wouldn't see any kind of version info. And it's not really impacting. Well, that's going to be your patch type stuff, right? Just real simple things like that don't impact you and have got compatibility both backwards and forwards. And then minor are going to be those ones where the forward compatibility, which is definitely an important topic. If you're somebody who adopts early, you need to stop and make sure you understand what forward compatibility really is, because now that we have testing tools in place, there are nuances to that. And then our major are those that we call breaking changes. Now we have a document that Transport put together, and it details all this. And I've got some examples I've been bouncing off of them, of things that we typically do, and we want to really make sure that this is clear. And one of the new things we're going to be doing is on our topics, we're going to start adding in major minor patch as far as what it is we're talking about, so that you can kind of get a feeling, is this something that, like a definition change, maybe it's a little interim tweak that we do, or is this going to be one of these impacting things, it's going to be a full version, and you're not going to have forward compatibility. So any questions on this? I think for the most part, if you're an analyst and you're doing the dictionary job, this isn't really going to impact you. But you see minor changes, you'll know to go look at the timestamps and see that maybe that definition got tweaked. All right, let's move on here. So one of the additions we've got in what's going to be 3.0 is this sort of change in perspective. Took me a little bit to kind of get my head around it, but once I did, and God bless Josh being patient with me to where I got to the point where I was like, aha, is that, you've probably heard the term resource, right? And it's got a technical viability and use out there. We've got sort of our own definition for that word in the dictionary workgroup. If you want a visualization, you just look in the wiki and you see all those different resources that are stacked up there. That's our legacy term. And those are things that tend to be able to stand on their own. They might relate to other tables, but something like property, you will often see a property table on its own out there. You might go search members on their own, even though those two can be related, right? So those were our resources. And then we had these collections, right? And those tended to be things that were dependent. So rooms, you're not going to tend to have detail about the rooms and not have a property. So that's where we use the term collection to say this is dependent upon the other. There was nothing super strict about it, but it's roughly where we were at. Now we've got a much more verbose way of saying how these things come together. And it also creates an opportunity for us to, even have more information. So I invite you to take a look at these resources. You're going to see changes that we're going to cover with regards to the wiki and the spreadsheet. And this is all really getting us into an alignment. And the part that I like about it is this notion of having a shape, right? So like rooms, it's a shape. It's a set of fields that serves a purpose of describing a room, right? Is that we create one and it's a resource. It's not a collection. Okay, well, now it can be whatever, because we've got a table in there that identifies these models and identifies the fields, right? And the resources for those fields and where these things fall in. So definitely much more for the folks on the tech side. For those on the business analyst side, some terms for you to get comfortable with. So ask questions, make sure you're comfortable with what it means to you. Fundamentally, you're still, if you're talking about, a new enumeration for a bathroom that has 6 sinks, that doesn't really change so much for you doing that analyst work, but there's a new lingo and something to get comfortable with. And this is going to align better with transport and just make the whole thing connect a lot better. Any questions on these? All right, so that's done, and that's in 3. And I had mentioned there's going to be some new formatting. If you pull spreadsheets, right, and you've got your macros and you do all sorts of killer fancy stuff to map RESO to your metadata and all that, you're going to probably have some work here. So keep an eye on this. This will be coming out here shortly. It's going to be part of 3. There'll be some changes in the wiki. So far I don't perceive that that's going to be much of a challenge for folks. But you will see these things in there. So any questions on these changes? Does anybody use the spreadsheets that we produce? Okay, cool. So keep an eye on this. If you want to send something in to us, and say, hey, when is this? I don't know, Jason, if we've got a particular target on that change. On the modification of the spreadsheet.
So we have the 3.0, the 3.0 sheet out there now.
Okay. All right.
We do need to put one out for 2.0, which will be, that's it. Thanks.
And how long are we going to run parallel all right, that's just transitioning from 2 to 3.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the scoop on that. Did everybody hear that? Okay, so the 3.0 spreadsheet is there. I assume it's finalized. I haven't looked at it. I don't. It's in review. Okay, so actually this is I'm going to dive in and take a look myself. This is a good time to dive in, and if you have any comments, if you've got a fancy macro and there's some problem, now's a good time to bring it up. Fundamentally, the information is still there, but if you do leverage those, take a look at that. It's out there now for review. So as far as final release, well, 3.0 gets ratified in the spring. So I would assume that we're going to be done before that. And during this period, certification does more work and gets things built out to do their testing. All right, and then we've got some, like in the fields, there's some new fields in the fields. To help describe fields. All right. Okay, we had voted in a change, and we haven't closed 3.0 to be clear. We're going to be doing that here pretty soon, and this is an item that's in 3.0, formerly known as 2.1, where we said, yeah, let's do these concession fields. So CMLS brought it forward. Everybody seemed to agree. I remember the vote had some little contention about like what name we had for a particular field, but fundamentally the concept was sound in the group. I received a recommendation that we revisit this as a group because the industry, if you haven't noticed, has very much changed their temperament on rolling out these fields. There's a lot of modification where we felt solid. We were definitely doing it early because everything was in motion very quickly around the whole compensation and how concessions plays in and all that. Right now, the recommendation we have, and this is going to go to you for a vote right here, right now, is that we put this on hold. Because it's already starting to change with even those who were sponsoring it from the get-go. And by putting it on hold, does that prevent you from doing anything? No, it actually frees you up to do whatever you want. Unless it runs into something that's already in the dictionary, but these won't be there to get in your way. So I would say at least those who didn't like a name, I don't know why I remember that during the discussion. You can use your name if we pluck this out. But I think the main thing is we just don't really have stable utilization. And what would happen is if the world implements something different, we go to testing, and then we're going to automatically yank these out at some point, and it would be all for nothing. On top of that, there's a certain level of risk and so on with this. So everybody needs to go back and have their own internal conversations on this topic. And because of the fluctuation, I think at RESO, we just go ahead and pull this off the table for now, see where we land, and then we'll bring it back. So do I have anybody that wants to make a motion to that front?
I have a question about just the semantic versioning. What kind of impact do you see happening with the certification tools and getting like, let's say, RESO certified, like 3.0, or are you going to go down to the patch level as well? Because those are...
I don't think I caught all of your question there.
Okay, so with semantic versioning, there's the major, minor patches.
Right.
What kind of impact is that going to have on getting certified, like RESO certified API? Because are you going to test for just the new changes or both new and breaking changes for patches and majors?
Right now, our only process for things that get tested to qualify that is that in the fall, we take a vote like we're going to and we close it. And then it goes into a comment period. And things can change, but we're not taking anything that the workgroup brings in as new is going on to the next version at that point. And we're in that comment period for 6 months. And meanwhile, certification builds out all their tools and gets ready, and then testing starts the following spring after the board ratifies. So right now, it's all about the 2.0 testing. This 3.0 isn't going to change that, but come the spring, we're on to the next version. Now, if we have a patch and it's a definition change, that doesn't change certification. And if there's a consensus, we might go ahead and release that, and you might see a 3.01, but a 3.01, in theory, would not mean you need to do anything. We've just improved a definition. That make sense? Yes?
What's the long-term support of older versions? Do y'all maintain them indefinitely?
Let's have you use them.
Sorry. Do y'all retire the older versions after a certain amount of time? Do y'all promise a lifetime or long-term service on the older versions?
Are we going to keep testing older versions indefinitely? I would say probably not. Was that your question? Sam, yeah, please.
We'll just have like usually you can say how far, for the next so many years, we will support this version.
Yes.
We'll maintain
So
it.
what we're supporting right now is to the most current 2 versions. So the current version will be currently certified. And then as we move to 2.0 here, and we hit the new version of 3.0 in spring, everything on 1.7 will become a legacy certification. They'll be supporting those 2, but the goal of the organization has been to move folks forward, obviously, not to have 4 current versions and data consumers have to figure out which version everybody's on. So that's the current process there.
I've always looked at it a little bit differently, and it's how long do I have to get that next certification before I'm not compliant? Okay, any other questions on this front? And again, let's circle back to the question at hand. So we need a motion to pluck our concession changes that we voted in earlier this year out of 3.0 before we close it. Is anybody willing to make that motion? All right, I got a motion from Matthew. We have a second. And what's your name? Robert?
Robert Outlaw.
Okay. Got that, Jason? Cool. All right, discussion.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Just as a point of order, I always wonder when we're at these meetings, why do we vote here when we're not sure, when you're not sure if the people in here are part of the work group, or who's voting, or how many votes you have per corporation? I just get a little confused.
3 reasons.
Yeah.
I've got an answer for that for sure.
Okay.
One, you'll tend to find that what we vote on here is lighter fare. That's reason 1. And reason 2 is why do we vote on lighter fare? So people can see what the process is. Anything that's had any depth, I've always punted out to it. So you'll tend to see here things that are just like, oh, we want to add this enumeration.
Yeah, but
Now, third is we've got a situation.
Yeah.
And we have this moment to take care of it, or if we decide not to.
But I understand that, and I told with all due respect, but we've had an issue in the past where things have been brought to the floor, and then it's gone back to the work groups, and there's been controversy. So I just think, and I don't mean to disrespect the process, but as an exec myself, we're not appropriately following Robert's rules in doing this.
How so?
Because you don't have a confirmed quorum, you don't know if the appropriate.
We don't have a defined quorum.
A quorum is you have to confirm that the people that are on.
No, you have to define a quorum. We haven't defined a quorum.
Have you? Because you don't know if
Nope.
the people in here are part of your committee, or part of your work group.
Yeah, thus the lighter fare and the illustrative. Now,
I'm
we can
just
certainly
you
vote
don't-
to make that
you don't know if
rigid.
People in here are part, I'm just saying, you have new people, you have non-members, you have members, you have a mixture of individuals in this room. Have a
Also,
discussion
Divina,
time.
we don't validate that
I'm
on the
speaking.
work group
I'm sorry,
meetings.
I'm speaking.
Okay.
Have people here on the floor that are having the discussion.
Yeah.
But you don't have the right people. You can have the discussion, but to have a vote here on the floor, it feels very uncomfortable to me because you don't have the right people here to have. I'm just saying that this has come up before and it just feels uncomfortable. I'm done speaking.
Okay. We're all about the process here. Put a post in the work group, say that I want to define this. I would tell you that if we want a quorum, we're going to have to define the quorum. We're going to have to validate the attendees. And that's fine. We totally can. Because Jason just totally looks like he wants more work to do. And I'm just joking around. I am not opposed to that. But we have very clearly not had a quorum for 15 years. And we have done exactly this for 15 years. And I can tell you right now, if you go back and look at them, they're all lighter fare. And no one has come to me with a specific saying, I've got this problem.
I understand, but you're not who you were 15 years ago. You're a larger organization representing international and local organizations. You're not the same.
Yeah, but we're kind of the same we were 6 months ago. So you got the process. If you don't do a post, then I can't help you. Or send an email and say, I want to get this post. I want this work group to work this way. We'll totally do it.
Okay.
If we get the vote.
Okay.
Everyone has to agree on it.
I would just add, I think we do need to define quorum because I think we have the same problem in the work groups. 80 people sitting there, not everyone's participating. Some people are there their first time. I think the only way to solve that is defining that quorum so we can figure that out for here and in work groups.
Yeah, we can. I mean, one of the things I'm sure it's going to be a per membership. So we're going to have to set up some system where not only do we know who everybody is on the call, because here isn't any different than the call in my mind. You've paid to be here. I think this is better filtering than the calls. So we're going to have to make sure you get one vote per organization. We're going to have to validate who you are on that call, right? So put it in perspective, and then let's articulate these problems. I'd like to know what they are and talk about them and see if we really have a problem or if we have the perception of a problem. Because I'm all about what is the actual detail. So is that speaking against the motion that we have on the floor?
I'm not speaking against it.
Okay. And even doing a motion and a second is something we recently adopted, and that wasn't by way of motion in the group. We just decided let's tighten it up and get a first and a second and have discussion. All right. Any other discussion on putting on a hold on concessions? All right. All those in favor, please raise your hand. It's 28 to 30, somewhere in that ballpark. That work for you, Jason? All right, all those against? I got 2. Okay. So you may go ahead and implement this, but it's not going to be part of 3.0 certification. When this comes back up, if you do want to bring it back up, we can put it on the agenda the very next meeting. So those who voted against, if you want to talk about this, there's an open door for that. All right, moving on. There we go. Okay, so do we have anything else? Nope. All right, moving on. All right, closing data dictionary. This will hopefully be a tradition at this meeting. All right, so if you're against us voting to close it at this meeting, put up a post. Let's talk about how you want to do it. You know, maybe there's some options where we use some online services. Something like, you know, I use like a thing called My Committee. That's pretty handy. Maybe it doesn't handle this scope so well, but there's always solutions out there if you want. All right. So this is a major version release because we have, I know at least we have data type changes in it. So that's why we're doing 3.0 instead of 2.1. Any questions on that? Yes?
So it says that it's to be ratified at the RESO 2025 Spring Conference. Is it correct to understand that the year to get there and begin testing would give us until spring of 2026 to implement?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and ratification, to be clear, if you don't know, that's the board accepting our final package. So again, maybe we have some tweaks. Hopefully it's mostly errata, just making corrections between now and then. Now, we've had a lot of errata lately, if you hadn't noticed, but also 2.0 was the first time that we've done automated testing. And you used to be able to just kind of take something and put it in this exception sheet, and you know, this one guy, I haven't seen him in some time, but he'd look at it, and if he felt that was reasonable, then okay, you'd get a pass, right? Well, now we've got more of a mechanism. It's much tighter. So there've been a lot of errata. I would expect we're going to see a lot less in this one. But we've even got a topic to talk about that some people call errata. And it's a reasonable argument that it is or isn't. And then the spring conference, not necessarily on like the opening day. It's whenever the board meets and ratifies. And that's when the clock starts ticking. And we will need a motion and a second to get started. Come on, don't you want to be famous? Be the one who made the motion to close? Okay, could you shout your name out? Bonnie, did you get that, Jason? Okay, and who's our second? Matthew is our second. Yeah. All right, any discussion? Going once, going twice. All right, all those in favor, raise your hand. Okay. 3, 4, 5, 6. It's at least 40. Any against? Come on, we need somebody against. John, raise your hand. All right. That closes out 3.0. Thank you very much. Congratulations. We've wrapped up another version. This is the beginning of our new cadence of doing this every year. All right. We were born in consensus. MLSs sat around the table and said, let's do this. We compromised, and then we somewhat had convention. Convention existed. If you saw my presentation, I gave you like a little graphical of my guess on how much was consensus and how much was convention. So we would commonly use words like timestamp or date, right, to differentiate things, to kind of glean into definitions. We would decide where we're going to put our adjectives around the nouns and things like that. And then we've started shifting more towards convention because we're expanding beyond the MLS system, right? We're expanding beyond the AMS system. But we're also opening up new territory. So our commercial, for example, commercial sale, commercial lease, that came from MLS systems, not from commercial systems. And then we had our commercial project, which is the CRE. And so now you might say, well, why do we have commercial sale, commercial lease, and CRE? Because they're different industries. They're very, very different in how they operate, right? And yeah, there is overlap of the practitioners and of the product, but the systems and how they do things are different. And there are things that we might say, or me as an MLS guy, that's not our convention. What the hell are you doing? Well, I'm an MLS guy, and this is a commercial, a CIE type of system, which whoever's tried to blend those together, we can go commiserate later at what an adventure that is. So when they do something that's different from us, is this breaking convention for consensus? Kinda. Or by doing what we're doing, are we breaking their convention? We run the risk of developing something that an industry will never use. That's not much of a success in my book. But maybe it's an industry that we didn't really read it right, and maybe it is malleable. And maybe we can say, you know what, for this particular field, you're going to use these 3 fields that we use to create our very clean way that we like to express something. Whether it's, an area like square footage, that's an actual current topic. So this isn't a decision. This is an ongoing conversation. And this isn't a clear-cut thing by any stretch of the imagination. I can refer you to when we did the AMS systems. And they came in and altered some of the roster, and they added to it. But one thing that we kept and had in common was the street address wasn't number, direction, name, suffix, suffix direction, suffix modifier, separate fields. The AMS systems, fundamentally, when we put that together, and then when they revalidated it, it was just address 1, address 2. That completely breaks our convention of the listing that has street number, street name, and so on. So what is convention here? Is changing address to be what the MLS has for listings? Is that truly convention? There's totally an argument for that I believe in. That's the camp I sit in. But I cannot ignore the fact that this fundamentally came from something that was address 1, address 2. And I think that my dog in the fight really isn't all that worried about it. But what I'm personally interested in is that we're lucid about what we're doing with these decisions. And these are going to keep coming at us. And so you need to kind of think about that. And when you're engaged in a work group where you don't have one of those things, you need to be careful. And maybe there's some of these new things that we do that we come back and change the convention for all the rest of us. Because so far, it's all totally been the other way. It's like, oh, we're fundamentally, we've got our MLS thing, this is how the MLS does it, and when somebody's upset about a convention, it's because they didn't do it the MLS way. Well, we're trying to be much more than MLS. And we've wanted to be much more than MLS for a long time. We've always branded ourselves as real estate, not MLS. And this is a conflict that's going to exist out there, and it can have repercussions. So discussion on this, feelings. If you're on the technical side, I would say you're going to side with let's do it one way everywhere, because we need that reliability. We need to be able to adopt it very quickly. So let's hear from somebody as far as, what that importance is, how you touch these things beyond just the MLS system. That'd be a good argument in favor of convention. Yes?
If we use a combination of name, email, phone, and address, sometimes just for attribution. So that could be really valuable, and to me, I just feel like address 2, I'm not sure where that came from, like you said. Maybe there's a purpose, but
It's usually a suite, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's not a good situation. I mean, honestly, my addresses in roster have been one of the bane of my existence. That's why I'm a little bit, I don't care what the AMS systems did. And I think a lot of them have been changing to be a bit more verbose with their fields, to tell you the truth. And this is just an example, but, and then there's uses like you mentioned. And it's like, do we break a use case because of convention? My biggest worry, and I remember expressing this very long time ago, and somebody was like, hey, Rob, you should talk about the dictionary. I think I'd been at it for like a year or two. And I still feel this way today. Standards are the most useful way, or the most effective way to stifle innovation. And it's incumbent upon us. Yeah. And it's incumbent upon us to be careful with what we're doing, that we don't put ourselves into a box of some vanilla app, right? We want to be colorful, we want to be engaging, we want to solve problems. So when it comes to this convention versus consensus, it's got some depth to it. And I hope we have some more meaningful conversations. If somebody wants to champion a subgroup, let's spin one up. Let's have a conversation on this front. Let's try to get people from different camps.
I think in the context of Data Dictionary, I don't really feel like the convention is going to stifle much innovation. I think in the opposite, actually. When I'm coming up with a new field that I need to add that's not in the standard yet, I have to determine, am I going to call it X comments, X remarks, X description, and if I choose the wrong thing, that's when my innovation is stifled, because we have to turn back around and undo it. So, I'm pretty strongly in favor of as much convention in these names as possible, removing things like numerics from strings that don't need to be there. Just as much of it as we can cover at one time really helps push it forward.
Yep. Yes.
I'm still in the same camp, but just an argument for consensus on this one is, how much easier is it for a tech vendor or provider to adopt or adapt to the data versus individual MLSs having to go in and make that change in their AMS? So just ease of industry.
Yeah.
It might be easier for a tech organization that's building things with that data to, parse that field out and move on.
Yep. Very true. Some things aren't that hard. Some things break everything. You had some crazy rule set that's all built around this enumeration, and now suddenly it's a string field. Right? And I know that's not specific to yours, but in that general, yeah, absolutely. All right, so I'm going to move on from this, but this is conversation that needs to keep coming up. And if you're one of those who's frustrated because convention wasn't followed and how you've always done it is no longer there in the dictionary and you're forced to change, or if you're frustrated because like you're a data consumer and all this inconsistency is just sucks the all the profit you would ever make out of serving our industry, right? Which I think is a risk, that we make this so hard, we do it all the time, that it's hard for innovators to come into the space, that they choose to work in like medical or other places that pay better. That's why I think this is such an important topic. Yes?
Can I throw one hurdle out there when we talk about add edit? Having validation rules for listing input,
Yeah.
there might be some that we can all agree on are very critical or important, and that let's try to define which ones those are, where we need to achieve consensus, but acknowledge that there's some edge case rules that maybe need to be based on convention, because for anyone who's building an add edit application, that universality of validation rules will be tough to implement if there's fragmentation of many different types of rules for validations.
Yeah, and we've got, like, transport has some solution to communicate those. I've done a lot of work with the old RETS validation expressions, but then does anything stop us from, like, actually saying, hey, what would be a sort of a reasonable rule for list price? Just as a put your toe in the water. Now, the first thing I warn you is we don't do a whole lot on the rules front, and that can be a really squiggly animal if we want to try to unpeel that. So we should maybe start with just a little toe if you feel that's a priority. And then if you want to get started, let's get a post. Maybe pick something in particular pain point, and let's get a post. If we need to, let's put it into R&D, and they can go out and do some research for us and find out additional information on that front. We've got a lot of avenues. Okay, I need to move us along. Okay, so with regards to how we've got the topic of legacy stuff deprecations, there's now affirmative statuses that you have available. So remember, we would take the deprecations and throw them over on this other tab in the spreadsheet. I'm still apologizing for having been an accountant, but I know many of you use spreadsheets, so I'm not alone. So now there's a place for you to identify that. Definitely invite you to take a look at that in 3.0. We're getting pretty close to this one, but I think we need to spend a little more time talking about it, because I think fundamentally where the conversation is at is we're talking about taking the the community pool thing and giving its own life. But now we've got, just with a pick list, but now we've got this conversation of, well, let's make pool resources, in other words, collections, in other words, shapes. So are we going to make a pool shape to where you can describe the pool ad nauseum and you can have many of them? Well, that was asserted. I think that's the most recent comment in that post. So we need to decide whether or not we're going to do some of these things. So you need to hop into this post, take a look. I did a little bit of refining on this list of lookups because it's not exactly the current pool features. And then we know pool features are used a lot. Do we want to change it to call it private pool features? We can, we probably should. It hurts a lot of people because just about everybody uses it. So we've got some of these decisions left to be made. I think fundamentally we know what we're proposing. We just got to mop up the ancillary bits. I think we can still do this under the main work group at the next meeting. Hopefully the next meeting is just going to have a few topics that we can churn on some of these things. But if you care about this separate public pool list, you need to get in there and comment. And if we get stuck, we can subgroup it. If we need more time, we could always do that. I think if we create create that dimension of having a collection for pools, pool types, and so on, we need to put that into a subgroup. And we need to be careful not to invent something that nobody does. Okay, any questions on this one? All right, moving right along. This is another one that's a little close. I think basically what this sums up to is the garage attached yes, no goes away in favor of separate garage attached, detached values. But then now we've got a work group that's starting to work on the ADUs, which you'll be hearing about. Well, we already know it's not just ADUs. We're leaning towards it just being dwellings, but is this structures in general? Are we going to be best served by just creating one particular shape to handle all these other structures, which includes garages and outhouses and whatever it is, right? So that's a question, right? Again, if we go down this route, we're definitely not doing consensus. We're following a convention that's pretty normal for a lot of different, data systems. And then somebody's going to have to implement it so that we don't roll something out that we don't use. So again, get in, take a look at this post, comment. We need interaction. This potentially got a small impact where all we do is just add in a little redundancy into the system, which is never a good answer, but it could wind up being a very big impact thing. All right. Okay, international currency. The whole international topic, I've got a few slides here. As you know, and you've seen on some of the presentations, we're expanding into the world. I've got some experience having worked in Britain. And, it's a different world. And currency is a real obvious thing. Languages are some of the things that we've tackled. And you're going to see here that also, in addition to how we support currency, which is, we've got a pretty poignant request here that to me is very straightforward, that we could do it. But we've also got energy. I'm not entirely sure yet if this can fit into what we have to support, home efficiency, energy ratings, all those kind of things. So I think this has got a potential for a group, and hopefully we can get some of these folks from overseas to participate, and we can build it up. So this is a little foreshadowing of something that we'll be working on. If you're interested, please come in and join the conversation, especially if you've got some experience outside of the US and Canada. And here's a rating report. You've probably seen different ones like this. Yes?
Quick question on currency. Are those things just going to follow ISO standards?
Is it what?
Are currency codes, for example, going to follow ISO standards?
We're tending that way.
Okay.
I would say most likely, Josh, somebody from transport is going to step in and say, come on, guys, stop inventing stuff. There's already a standard for that. And I wholeheartedly support this. This group will need to vote that in, and having people here to bring up, make sure we don't do something without paying attention to that helps too. So, and I think that conversation's already been had as well. Excuse me. So disaster, this came up. We haven't had to post it along to vote on it, but this notion is definitely been around for a while. And it really speaks to, making properties available to help cover those situations where people are looking for homes. Excuse me. So this is coming up, probably at our next meeting. Hopefully get something voted in. I think what we've got posted says it all, but make sure you ask your questions. Office exclusive. I'm surprised so much time has gone by and we haven't tackled this. I didn't even think about it either. I've actually got it in systems, and it's sort of that control that says whether or not this is a listing or it's an office exclusive. You might look at it that simply. There's conversation we need to have. You need to look at how you're handling it, or if you're not handling it, and what you want to do. If you're not handling it, saying we don't put office exclusives in the MLS at all, we have this form and we put it in a file cabinet, bring that forward. Whatever it is you do. So we're going to have this conversation. And then various tasks. I think for the next big major version, a lot of the stuff you saw that was errata for 2.0 was truly fixing 2.0 decisions. We've got more legacy stuff to fix to help with that shift towards convention. ID versus ID is one of them. MLS in all uppercase, MLS, AOR, a lot of these things that are pseudo camel case that we very much decided to do. And in all honesty, my motivation was it looked good, not being a strict standard. So I'll confess, we got cleanup to do though. That's going to wind up most likely being a major change. All right, deprecation. Any feelings about our current path for deprecation? Nobody's using it, we're almost going to automatically get rid of it. We'll post it out, give someone a chance to say, hey, wait a minute, and then we're going to get rid of it if it's not in use at all. And then we'll have conversations about low utilization. Pruning the dictionary so it's just not bloated. All right, and we got a couple other items. I do want to move on. Jason, would you care to? I want to thank Jason for the awesome work that he's been doing. He is the subgroup wrangler. Each of these subgroups have been doing really good work, and a lot of credit to them. If you're interested in getting up on this stage, I'm not sure I can recommend it, but we sure need you. Any topic you feel passionate about, bring it forward. We'll put you up here. We'll let people beat on you. All right, so take it away.
Yes, and thank you to the subgroup chairs, if anyone is in here especially, that helped with these groups. Definitely, they were a big part of this process, and I'll thank them each individually for each one of these. So, rental. Okay, so that one was finished. That one will be in this next data dictionary version. I want to thank Josh Taylor for that one. The subgroup is concluded. They proposed, basically their goal was to improve the residential lease property type, to try to make it more friendly to strictly leases. They added some new fields and some new lookups to help convey that information. There's a couple changes to existing data elements, like adding the residential lease property type as a reference to the fields and lookups which already exist. But something like lease price, I think, was only for business, I believe it was, but realized that could be used for lease properties too, so that was added to that field so as to not create a bunch of new stuff when it's not needed. Again, that one was voted in, and the information, the fields and lookups will be in the next version. Commercial, or CRE, Nathan Graham, thank you to him. That subgroup is also concluded. The purpose of that was to have data dictionary data elements for strictly commercial stuff, not quote unquote resi-mercial that kind of is in there now. So there's going to be a whole new property type called CRE, similar to residential or farm or mobile or residential lease. And that can be tagged on existing fields and lookups. Then there's also several new fields and lookups to kind of help convey commercial information, like an auction field, a couple other things like that really are only going to be useful for that use case. Again, that was voted in and passed. That will be in the next version too. Waterfront, that one was very quick and very efficient. I think we only had 3 or 4 meetings. Anyway, it all started with the waterfront. Water information was redundant across the dictionary. There was stuff in frontage type, there was stuff in waterfront features. And the goal started to be to kind of reduce the duplication in that. And it ended up with this new structure that's possible with the model and the data shape, which is similar to a resource, but doesn't need to be exposed at the top level. That's what this water bodies proposal came out to be. And it's basically a property can have one-to-many water bodies to explain the name of it, the features of it, if it's accessible, the ownership of it, all that kind of information. So it's not just flattened into the property resource anymore. That will be also in the next version that was approved. Building, this was one that, again, also approved, and the goal was to convey information about not only like vertical residential housing, about the shared space, say if it has a gym or a dog park, that kind of stuff, outside of the individual unit. So that you can still have an individual unit description, but then you can have something to describe the communal structure that can be reused, again, not flattened. That's going to be its own resource. That was also passed. ADU that's currently active, accessory dwelling unit, that means we're kind of going away from calling that name because it has a legal connotation. The group decided to more describe the just additional living units or additional living space instead. So they're also pursuing a data shape similar to the water bodies, and that one is also going great so far. I would say there's probably another meeting or two left. So it's active, and they are going strong on that one. And bulk sale. So this one, the bulk sale terminology is kind of being called package instead. They decided that was a better name. But it's to create a standard to convey multiple properties or parcels listed together. Because what we got feedback was that everybody has to invent their own way to do that. MLSs, I'm sure you know, you have your own procedures to do that. When you close it out, it's not easy because it would probably throw off some statistics and comparable reports. The idea there is to create a standard for how to convey package listings. And they are currently active and also going well. And that is the subgroup update, and I'm a little bit over time, so any questions about subgroups? And if you want to participate in subgroups, you can always email dd@reso.org. All right, thank you.
I have to tell you the truth, I was just going to wander out the back door, and that was going to be the end of it. But Sam had a suggestion that I come up and close out the session, which I think is a much better idea. Anyhow, thank you to everybody who participates. We have our monthly meetings. If you have any access, any kind of questions, Jason and I will be hanging around here, so feel free to come up and hit us up. And we've also got Kevin here, so if you're able to stick around too, Kevin. Sometimes we don't have a line, sometimes we have a line. So if it takes a little bit to get to us, great. And then we're here through the evening and into tomorrow. So feel free to come up to any of us and ask any questions or bring any ideas you have. And that will adjourn our meeting. Thank you very much.